If you hadn't attacked them in their sleep, Kaylee would have kicked your ass. You were pathetic.
They were kind of cheering.
So what was Funk's exculpatory evidence for Kohberger? We will never know. Emotional testimony in Bryan Kohberger's sentencing hearing in Ada County. In this episode of About the Law, we go over the Goncalves' testimony, and we have a guest who was there. Is the Bryan Kohberger case really over? I mean, he has been sentenced. He pled out. He signed a document that said that he would plead guilty to all of the counts and no appeals, although we talked about that in my last episode. However, on the day of the victim's statements, very emotional. I don't know what I expected, anything other than that. In our previous episode, our midweek episode, we heard from Dylan Mortensen herself, very emotional. And Bethany Funk did not go, but she had a statement read by her longtime friend and neighbor, Emily Allant. Again, we did that in our previous episode. In this episode, we are going to go over some of the things that law enforcement said right after the sentencing, now that the gag order is lifted and they had an opportunity to start talking, which they did. They held a press release. We'll look at that. But let's go to the sentencing hearing and the Goncalveses. And amazing. Steve Goncalves has been somewhat outspoken during the whole thing. He walked up to the podium, grabbed it, and moved it around so he wasn't facing the judge or anyone else. He's facing eye to eye, staring at BK. Look at him. Not happy. Waiting for this moment for days. Grabs the podium. All right, listen.
Today, we are here to finish what you started. Today, you've lost control. Today, we are here to prove to the world that you picked the wrong families. The wrong state, the wrong police officers, the wrong community. You tried to break our community apart. You tried to plant fear. You tried to divide us. You failed. Instead, your actions have united everyone in their disgust for you. I just learned from these lead investigators, to their shock, they worked in an investigation and actually worked with Pennsylvania police officers and the federal FBI. You united everyone. Everyone was united after you. None of us are divided.
One of the questions that I received is that aren't victim witness statements supposed to be victims saying how the crime has affected them? Yeah, that's the original idea. And how far can the victims and their families go in directing their hostility towards the defendant? And I don't know if the line was crossed here because it's supposed to be the former, not so much the latter, but one can certainly understand how the Goncalves family, starting with Steve, felt.
We are united in our disgust and our love for these children. Today, you have no name. Because when this all started, we all came together and we said, let's stop even talking about his name and just use initials. So even the media just calls you BK. That's all you are. Looking back when the police officers knocked on my door, told me what happened to my child, told me what happened to Maddie Mae, I don't think he was even out of the driveway before my kids turned around and looked at me and said, what do we do, Dad? I told them, you get to work. You get your ass to work. And we started calling, we started texting, we started emailing.
Yeah, the family of the Goncalves wasn't going to sit back. They weren't going to sit back, and they started doing everything they could to get back to it. I mean, obviously, they're in a lot of grief. There's no question about that. But Olivia actually went out and got video footage and got a lot of information and gave it to law enforcement because, you know, different people respond to grief differently, and that was their response, and it turned out to be somewhat effective.
You know what? Within hours, we had your white car on the camera. We knew from the very beginning we had you. Police officers tell us within minutes they had your DNA, like a calling card. You were that careless, that foolish, that stupid. Master degree, you're a joke, complete joke.
Now, here's a guy that got 3 degrees in Pennsylvania. He got an associate's degree, then he got a bachelor's degree, then he got a master's degree in psychology and also in the criminology, and now he's accepted into a PhD program. And at some point, certainly must have felt superior. And now he's being called an idiot, in other words.
But we took this disaster and we did what we could. We put everything online. We took our kids, we took our images, we took everything that they did, their videos, their photos, the girls' pranks, Ethan singing. We put it out there, we shared it with the world. And the world united. And all they ended up, when they talked about this case, is they talked about Kaylee Jade, Maddie Mae, Xana, and Ethan. Everything what these people meant to us, a father, a mother, a brother, a sister, we shared that with our community. Then we shared it with our state. We shared it with the country. And eventually we shared it with the world. The world's watching because of the kids, not because of you. Nobody cares about you. You're not worth the time, the effort to be remembered. In time, you will be nothing but 2 initials forgotten to the wind. No visitors, nothing more than initials on an otherwise unmarked tombstone.
Yeah, and that's a question that people have. His professor in Pennsylvania wrote the book about BTK, Dennis Rader, and she has expressed interest in, studying Mr. Kohberger. But you know what? I think Idaho doesn't really like that. Idaho is going to do whatever they can to prevent the access. And Mr. Goncalves is trying to kind of say, nobody cares. Nobody cares. Whether that's true or not, he's just, and you can't blame him for saying that and feeling that in this moment.
From this moment, we've all started. From this moment, we will forget you. We want to all leave in closing. One last thing. You picked the wrong family. And we're laughing at you on your trip to the pen that will be today or tomorrow. I'll close with God bless all the men and women that worked on this case and all the hard work that you guys did. You guys allowed us to grieve and allowed us to get through this. The amount of work that you guys put together and the way that you guys put it together was beautiful. There was hard times to be expected, but thank you all. God bless.
And so, of course, Ashley Jennings gets up and introduces the daughter. Olivia is next. One of the court clerks pulled the podium back into position. One of the things I'm thinking about here is that Mr. Goncalves is, he's had years to think about this moment, and he's still very emotional. And he's saying, you're going to go into nothing. And like I said before, the teacher that he had at the university in Pennsylvania, Ramsland, has, she wrote the book about BTK, and she's expressed an interest in studying this guy. You know what came to mind when I heard that? Okay, BTK, that's fine. But you know what I'm thinking about? I am old enough. I will come out and admit that I am old enough to remember Charles Manson. And in 1969, I was in high school. And I remember in our debate club, we were actually debating the DP way back then. And I remember, I grew up in the Bible Belt. I'm very conservative, and I was all for the DP. I've moderated somewhat about that over the years, learning what I've learned. But we would argue, other people would argue against the DP, not only on moral grounds, but saying, let's keep Mr. Manson alive. We can study him and learn from him. The same kind of gibberish they're saying now about BK. I defy anyone to tell me, a psychologist, a psychiatrist, an LICSW, a license. I defy anyone to tell me what we learned from keeping Manson alive all of those years. You know what? Every couple of years, he would snicker and sneer at the TV cameras when he came up for his parole. I don't think anyone anywhere, anyhow, learned anything from him other than he was who he was. So I digress. The next speaker, if you thought Mr. Goncalves made some points, let's listen to the sister, Olivia.
Hello, I'd like to start by thanking the court for allowing me the time and opportunity to speak today. My name is Olivia, and I'm the big sister of Kaylee Goncalves, and I was blessed to love Madison Mogen as a sister too. I'm not here today to speak in grief. I'm here to speak in truth. Because the truth is, my sister Kaylee and her best friend Maddie were not yours to take. They were not yours to study, to stalk, or to silence. They were two pieces of a whole, the perfect yin and yang. They are everything that you could never be.
You know, people are saying that what was in front of BK there in his orange uniform was a piece of paper with a black heart on it. I don't know. I don't know where it came from, and I don't really know, other than to speculate what we are to think of that.
Loved, accepted, vibrant, accomplished, brave, and powerful. Because the truth about Kaylee and Maddie is they would have been kind to you. If you had approached them in their everyday lives, they would have given you directions, thanked you for the compliment, or awkwardly giggled to make your own words less uncomfortable for you. In a world that rejected you, they would have shown mercy. Because the truth is, I'm angry. Every day I'm angry. I'm left shouting at the inside of my own head everything I wish I could say to you. The truth about me is when I heard the news, I didn't cry. I listened for them. I promised them I would, that I would fight for them, that I would show up no matter what it cost me. I swore I'd never let them feel alone. Because you see, I've always been their heavyweight. I've always been the one to fight the battles they didn't feel ready to fight themselves. All it ever took was a call, and they knew I would handle it for them, no matter the time, no matter the cost. They could wave their white flag because they knew I would never back down, not for them, and not even death could change that. Somewhere along the line, I started to think about what I would say to them if I was given just one last chance. If I could gather enough heartbreak or love or sacrifice or whatever it took to get just one message across, what would I say? Throughout this entire process, I've written my feelings down at every moment, my wishes, my love, my denial, my anger. And as one final act of love, I'd planned to read these thoughts, even jarring and discombobulating and not even making sense. Because for me, that was true love. As bare and as naked as it could be, not laced in pretty words or dressed for the occasion, but written through bleary eyes at 2 a.m. with clenched fists, angry at this reality.
The problem with the fact that her father, Steve Goncalves, had moved the podium forward so he could face BK, and then the court clerk only moved it part way back, not all the way back, is we can't see her other than a slim profile of the front of her face. And so that's unfortunate, but in my opinion, her voice is making up for all of that.
My true final act of love was to continue on without them, for them. That dream to read aloud my love to them, to bring meaning through pain, was the latest blow in realizing you don't deserve it. And Kaylee and Maddie don't need it. Kaylee and Maddie have always known my love, and they would never ask me to prove it by further victimizing myself to a defendant who has shown no guilt, no remorse, no apprehension. They would say to me, why would you give the satisfaction of showing vulnerability now? You promised you would never back down. And for that clarity, I'm thankful. I won't stand here and give you what you want. I won't offer you tears. I won't offer you trembling. Disappointments like you thrive on pain, on fear, and on the illusion of power. And I won't feed your beast.
The line of the day is coming up. Wait for it.
Instead, I will call you what you are: sociopath, psychopath, murderer. I will ask the questions that reverberate violently in my own head, so loudly that I can't think straight most any day. Some of these might be familiar, so sit up straight when I talk to you. How was your life right before you murdered my sisters?
Okay, do you remember that survey that early in this case it was reported that apparently, allegedly, as part of his coursework, and we don't know that, Mr. Kohberger put out a survey on Reddit reaching out to convicts who had admitted they had committed various crimes, asking them various questions, including how did you feel? How did you find the victim? What were, all of these questions. Olivia did her research and she kind of reformulated it and asked her own questions. But this is Olivia, pretty bright girl, asking him some of those same questions along the same lines.
Did you prepare for the crime before leaving your apartment? Please detail what you were thinking and feeling at this time. Why did you choose my sisters?
Don't you hate when your own words are thrown back at you and used against you? Gotta wonder what he's thinking.
Before making your move, did you approach my sisters? Detail what you were thinking and feeling. Before leaving their home, is there anything else you did? How does it feel to know the only thing you failed more miserably at than being a murderer is trying to be a rapper? Did you recently start shaving or manually pulling out your eyebrows?
A lot of people have mentioned that they thought that Mr. Bushy Eyebrows, as Dylan Mortensen had observed, has been shown maybe with less bushy eyebrows. Okay, wait for it. It's coming. One of the lines of the day.
Why November 13th? Did you truly think your Amazon purchase was untraceable because you used a gift card?
So now she's belittling him for the mistakes that he made, the obvious mistakes that a master criminal would never make.
How do you find it enjoyable to stargaze with such a severe case of visual snow? Where is the murder weapon? The clothes you wore that night? What did you bring into the house with you? What was the second weapon you used on Kaylee? What were Kaylee's last words? Please describe in detail the level of anxiety you must have felt when you heard the Bearcat pull up to your family home on December 30th, 2022. Which do you regret more? Returning to the crime scene 5 hours later, or never, ever going back to Moscow, not even once, after stalking them there for months? If you were really smart, do you think you'd be here right now? What's it like needing this much attention just to feel real? You're terrified of being ordinary, aren't you? Do you feel anything at all? Or are you exactly what you always feared? Nothing. If you're so powerful, then why are you still hiding, defendant? You see, I'm here today as me. But who are you? Let's try to take off your mask and see. You didn't create devastation. You revealed it in yourself. And that darkness you carry, that emptiness, you'll sit with it long after this is over. That is your sentence. And it was written on the wall long before you ever pled guilty. You didn't win. You just exposed yourself as the coward you are. You're a delusional, pathetic, hypochondriac loser who thought you were so much smarter than everybody else. Constantly scolding, turning your nose up to grammar mistakes, nitpicking and criticizing others. You wanted so badly to be different, to be special, to be better, to be deep, to be mysterious. You found yourself thinking you were better than everyone else, and you thought you could figure out the human psyche and see through it, all while tweaked out on heroin. Lurking in the shadows made you feel powerful because no one ever paid you any attention in the light. You thought you were exceptional, all because of a grade on a paper. You thought you were elite because your online IQ test from 2010 told you so. All of that effort just to seem important. It's desperate. There is a name for your condition, though. Your inflated ego just didn't allow you to see it. Wannabe. You act like no one could ever understand your mind, but the truth is you're basic. You're a textbook case of insecurity disguised as control. Your patterns are predictable. Your motives are shallow. You are not profound. You're pathetic. You aren't special or deep, not mysterious or exceptional. Don't ever get it twisted again. No one is scared of you today. No one is intimidated by you. No one is impressed by you. No one thinks that you are important. You orchestrated this like you thought you were God. Now look at you, begging a courtroom for scraps. You spent months preparing, and still all it took was my sister in a sheath. You work so hard to seem dangerous, but real control doesn't have to prove itself. The truth is, the scariest part about you is how painfully average you turned out to be. The truth is, you're as dumb as they come. Stupid, clumsy, slow, sloppy.
That's not what a PhD student wants to hear, that you're dumb and you're stupid and you're sloppy, is it? That's just not at all what he wanted to hear. The line of the day is coming. Hang on.
You want the truth? Here's the one you'll hate the most. If you hadn't attacked them in their sleep, in the middle of the night, like a pedophile, Kaylee would have kicked your ass.
Yikes. And that was Olivia Goncalves, the sister of Kaylee Goncalves' last shot, well put together speech. You know, some people have asked, isn't there a time limit on some of these? And as far as I know, and I've done as much reading and research as I can possibly do, there was no time limit. I would have thought that if anybody ran over, they would have been told. But to tell the sister of Kaylee Goncalves, who's incredibly articulate, obviously, to wrap it up would have been, in my view, remember the old line, this court is out of order. This court would have been out of order. So now the final Goncalves family member to speak. If you thought Olivia was articulate, which she was, here's the mother, Christy Goncalves.
I never imagined having to speak to someone so devoid of humanity. I didn't think I'd find the words low enough to meet you where you are. But now I realize this isn't about you. It's about what you've done to me, and I need you to hear it. When you murdered my daughter, Kaylee J. Goncalves, you didn't just take her life. You shattered others. You attacked what you could never be, and in doing so, you left a trail of devastation far beyond that house. You stole my peace. You've altered my every waking moment, every sleepless night, the way I view the world, people, safety, trust. It's all been changed by your cruelty. I no longer recognize parts of myself. Joy is harder to find. Laughter feels foreign. The world moves forward, but I'm suspended in a place of sorrow and rage. You've taken from me something that can never be restored. The grief sits with me every day, some days quietly, and other days so loud it drowns out everything else. The emotional toll you've inflicted on me is immeasurable. I live with a constant ache, with birthdays that are now memorials, with holidays that feel hollow, with empty chairs that scream louder than words ever could. I am forever changed. But for you, as a person working on a PhD in criminal justice, you really didn't think this one through. You're not that good. In fact, you're not that good at anything. You couldn't secure a job. You couldn't get along with others. You couldn't even get a female to look in your direction. All because you are pathetic. Now you're a joke in this courtroom. I wish I could crown you with a jester hat to complete your orange jumpsuit clown look. A dead killer doesn't kill again. So while I'm disappointed the firing squad won't get to take their shots at you, I'm confident that the men in prison will have their way with you in more ways than one.
Oh my.
You will finally get what you wanted, physical touch.
Oh my. And the
Just
next
probably
line
not
of the
how
day.
you were expecting it.
The next line of the day is coming up.
See, you haven't beat the system. You've simply entered a new one. where the rules are cruel and the consequences will never end. You are entering a place where no one will care who you are and no one will ever respect you. You will be forgotten, discarded, used, and erased. You will always be remembered as a loser, an absolute failure. And when those prison doors slam shut behind you, I hope that sound echoes in your heart for the rest of your meaningless days. I hope it reminds you of what we all already know. You're nothing. May you continue to live your life in misery. You are officially the property of the state of Idaho, where your fellow inmates are anxiously awaiting your arrival. But it's okay, because they're there to help you. Hell will be waiting. Quick message from our youngest daughter. Aubrey wanted to say, you may have received A's in high school and college, but you're going to be getting big D's in prison.
And that was the second big line of the day, in my view. Goncalves is holding back nothing at all. Although I imagine that they would have liked to say more, but you're in a court of law with a judge and prosecutors and court bailiffs. And so in that context, they really held back little, if anything at all. Immediately after the sentencing hearing, in which the judge did issue, guilty convictions on all 5 counts, the burglary, and then the first degree for all 4 of the victims, and fines, so that if Mr. Kohberger were ever to make any money at all in any manner, those fines would have to be paid to the court in restitution to the victims. So immediately after that hearing, there were others that spoke, but immediately after the conviction, then law enforcement held a press conference and gave what they believed to be some new information. Yeah, there was a lot of self-congratulatory back patting, but after all of that, the reporters got a chance to ask some questions, and there was some purportedly new information, and we're going to get to the top points of information. But first, I spoke to Sue Kapinsky, who was in the building. She had been in line early in the morning at 3:30 in the morning, and in the last minute, they shuttled her off into a very large room. It was the jury room, but there was a huge monitor, so she was in the building, and she got a good view, not from the back as she would have been had she been allowed in, but she got a good view of all of this. And so I talked to Sue, and here's our interview. I'm with Sue Kapinsky. Sue, you were in the courthouse in Boise, Idaho for the sentencing hearing. You waited in line, but you couldn't get into the courtroom. What happened?
Well, when I got there, there was already a lot of people in line that had been there since 10 p.m., 9 p.m. the night prior. So I thought I got to get a few hours of sleep because I drove almost 5 hours and worked all day. So I thought I got to get some sleep. And I got there, I got up at 2 a.m. and I got there by 3:30, and I was standing there with Twiz, and I looked at him and I said, I'm getting the side eye. And he said, can you not hear them talking? I said, no. He goes, they're mad because you think you're going to get in line up here.
You got there at 3:30 in the morning, and there were people that were saying you can't get in. Why not?
No, I couldn't get in line up with Twiz. I had to go to the back of the line. When I finally signed the paper that they passed down the line that's not official, I mean, it's common courtesy, right? Just get to the back of the line, whatever. But I was number 47, but then by the time I got my number to go in, I was 56.
What? How did that happen?
People got in front of the line.
Wait a minute. They wouldn't let you go up towards where Twiz was, but other people could cut? What? I don't get that at all.
I don't either. And it wasn't an official line guardian. It was, I guess this group of women, they go to all the hearings and trials, and they just take over, I guess. It's okay.
There weren't any court personnel or court, bailiffs or, sheriff's deputies or anything like that. Anybody official, trying to keep order out there? Really?
No. And then there was a lot a lot of reporters. That was probably more than half the line. There were a lot. And then I ended up, so I was 56. I think they took 45 people in, is all that got to go in.
Oh, no.
So I actually probably got a little better deal. They set us in the jury room, and it had a huge screen on the wall. So we actually got to see the front of the faces instead of the back of the heads.
What is it, like a Jumbotron? Was it that big? How big was this screen?
It was big. It was,
Really?
I think it's where they give jury instructions and maybe possibly where the extra jurors sit to watch. I don't know. It was just a huge jury room.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I've been called for jury duty and sat in those rooms and stewed until they realized, yeah, we don't want a lawyer on the jury. And I said, I told you that. Why did you make me come? Well, because you have to come. Why? Oh, because you have to. Anyhow, so all right. So you're sitting in this huge jury room with a big screen TV. What was it like for you to be there as this sentencing hearing proceeded? I mean, we watched it in my office streaming. What was it like to be there with all these other people? How many people were in the room?
Over 50.
Dylan Mortensen gets up and she cries up a storm. Bethany Funk did not show up, but she had her friend Emily read a statement. What was the reaction in the room there in the Ada County courthouse as those two, read their statements?
Yeah, I had to keep a lot of myself to myself because I was the minority in that group, maybe the only one in my stance. I think they were all reporters, most of them. So when it came to them, Bethany, she has exculpatory evidence, so I don't know if I take everything she said seriously or honestly. Dylan, that is what it is. Everything's coming out. We all saw the text messages. We read it. We knew what was going on all night. And then Bethany to say that she had a toothache and called her dad at 7 and he told her to take an Advil. And then she fell back asleep until almost noon. What was that? How do you do that after your text messages have been plastered everywhere? I don't know. So those two, I'm taken with a grain of salt.
Okay, all the other YouTube attorneys, and I am an attorney, I've been practicing for 36 years in Massachusetts and New Hampshire. But all the other YouTube attorneys just saying, well, he said he's guilty. He stood up for the colloquy. He admitted he was guilty. He admitted the burglary and all 4 counts of M. So he's guilty. I'm the only YouTube attorney, I'm surprised, that is still just having a hard time with the whole thing. But let me ask you, he did plead guilty. He signed papers. He stood before the judge and said, yes, 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 guilty, guilty, guilty. I'm not under the influence of anything, and it's my own willing, voluntary statement. How can you not think that he's guilty?
Because of all the shady work that was done. First off, the timeline, just the way they presented all their information. There was no factual evidence. What is this? And then they tried to hide everything for so long. How many motions were there to compel discovery? 26?
Something like that. It was in the 20s, sure. Yeah, but
And
I
they had
mean,
to
Sue,
keep
I
asking.
don't want to argue with you, but at the same time, he stood in court and he said, I'm guilty.
Yes.
All the other YouTube attorneys, except for me, say, we as attorneys, we have to respect the court. He's guilty. What do you say to them?
Read the documents. Look at all the new police records being dropped right now.
Well, specifically, what do you mean? I mean, I'm going through all the documents now. I've read a bunch of them. There are a few small surprises. There are no huge surprises. There are some little details. I was surprised, actually, that we had been thinking all along that they didn't secure the scene, that people just went in and out, and that's not true. They did, have a sign up pretty quickly and they did pretty much keep track of who was going in and out. So I have a hard time like yourself. I'm just asking devil's advocate questions because I'm getting a lot of grief. One of my commenters, because I am expressing skepticism about the whole, one of my commenters said, Andrew, you're an attorney. How can you have that view? Shame on you. I mean, shame on me that I still have questions. And, too bad. I'm from a generation where we put question authority bumper stickers on our cars. If the newer generation just accepts everything, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
anyhow, what specifically is it that you tell people to do their research that they'll find to show them that the whole thing is a sham? Tell me.
Well, I talked to a reporter actually at the end of everything, and she wanted to know why I thought that he could be innocent. And I said, mainstream media, they have a narrative, they're sticking to it. I said, but if you were to watch all the hearings, listen to what the defense is saying, and when Ann Taylor would speak, Hippler would just shut her off. He would ask her a question, she would try to answer, he shut her off. I said, if you read the documents, listen to the hearings, listen to what the defense is trying to say, you'll start to see what's going on and how it's been botched.
Yeah. Let me ask you this question. What was the atmosphere like in that room when, we had Dylan, we had Bethany, and then Steve Goncalves came over. He grabbed that podium and faced it right to Mr. Kohberger and just tore him a new one. What was the atmosphere in the room when that happened?
They were kind of cheering. The people around me, they were pretty happy about it. I think they were laughing. And I was like, that is mean. But anyway, it's...
Well then, okay. I'm sorry, go ahead. Finish your thought.
Yeah. I just had to, when it comes to the parents, I feel for them. I feel really, really bad. And they have been led to believe they have the right guy because that's what they were told. So it's hard for me. I can't say much about their statements. I would probably do the same thing.
Yeah. What were your thoughts when you heard Kaylee's sister, Olivia, who actually helped with the investigation in the early days and was outspoken, then remained silent until the sentencing hearing? Olivia again tore the man a new ear, we'll say. And in the end, she said, you're a coward. You're like a P-file. And if you had gone after my sister when she was awake, she would have kicked your effing ass. What was the reaction to that?
The room cheered that I was sitting in.
The final icing on the cake was then when Mrs. Goncalves got up with same sort of tone. Yeah. And she was even a little bit more, she called him dumb. He thought he was so smart. She said he was dumb. And I'm just wondering what the reaction was like there in the Ada County Courthouse when Mrs. Goncalves said to him, you know what? You think you're so smart, you're dumb. All these years you've gotten A's in the classroom. When you go into the institution, you're going to get a lot of D's. And my jaw dropped. What was the reaction like?
I was like, oh my gosh. And then, but the room I was in, so we were, segregated from the actual courtroom, but they were applauding in the courtroom. So the people I was surrounded with, they loved it. I felt bad. I wasn't going to even watch it. But at the last minute, I decided, okay, I'm going. Because I knew that was coming. I knew he was going to get his butt tore apart. And, with his condition, I was just like, oh, I don't know. But I decided to go. And then, so I do want to say one thing, how everyone, sits and harps on the way he acts, like no emotion, no nothing. And Taylor tried to say that in open court as well. Like, there's no expression because that's what the ASD does, right?
Well, that plus also, I don't know. It's that plus also, as an attorney, you would advise your client in a situation like that. Show no emotion. This judge in
Yeah.
the previous hearing said, I don't want any emotional outbursts.
Yeah.
I don't want any emotion. If there's any disturbance or outburst, you will be escorted out of the courtroom and you won't be allowed back in. So
Yeah.
any attorney in a defense attorney's position would advise their client, not that they'd necessarily take the advice, but
Yeah.
I would advise my client, no response, say nothing, do nothing. I don't want you to have any reaction. You'll notice in a lot of trials when a defendant is found guilty, when they're found innocent, they can't restrain themselves. But when a client is found guilty, often they're stoic. They have no expression. And so they've been advised. So I don't know what combination of those two things it is, but I mean, what would we expect him to do? Gesture, scribble,
No.
say, oh, Mrs. Goncalves, you're this, that, or the other. I mean,
Right.
If there's ever going to appeal, if there's ever going to be an appeal, and the door is slightly open on that.
41 days.
Yeah,
left.
he wouldn't want to have anything
Correct.
negative that he had said, and so he's
Right.
just following his attorney's advice, in my view, to just not say anything. Now, you didn't get a chance to see Mr. Kohberger at all, did you?
No. No, but I watched him really intensely, because he was just, he was fairly large on the screen I was watching. So I'm not going to say large, but I mean, on the screen, I was up close and personal, not being there.
Now,
But,
did you have the same screen? Did you have the same screen we had with all four of those little things, or did they open up
No.
the upper left-hand one so you could see him larger?
No, it was like that. So I was watching both, because you can see Vicka Barlow in the bottom one, because I was watching all three defense attorneys, because, they have almost the same expression on their faces as they did in the plea hearing. And then I do want to add one more thing to Bryan Kohberger's actions. So in his mind and his attorneys, he's innocent, correct?
Yeah.
So when they're yelling at him, I'm sure his attorneys said, just don't take it personally. They're going to do this. I don't know.
It seemed to me Alyssa Masoth, unlike the others who are very stoic, Ann Taylor looked like she wanted to crawl under the desk. Vicka Barlow, she wasn't directly on the one where we only had BK and the two of them. But Alyssa Masoth, she seemed to have a smile on her face at some point, and I don't know what that was. Maybe we just shouldn't read too much into it. Maybe she was relieved. I don't know. Did you see that also?
Well, yes, I think it's the way she was just holding her face. She's probably cringing a little bit at the same time. But I do know that they did place a piece of paper near Bryan Kohberger with a heart on it. I think so he could focus. Yeah, he could focus on that.
It was a black heart. Is that some secret meaning that people that are my age just goes over our head? What is that?
I don't know. I think they said last night I was watching something, and his initials are like the Black Knight, right?
Okay, so now you sent me two pieces of video. We cut a short and used the video out front of the courthouse earlier in the morning. We did a short and posted that. Then later in the day, you posted, after the hearing was over, a crowd out on the hallway. What was that video all about? What was that?
I do want to say real quick, though, for all those people that thought he was Papa Rogers,
Nope.
He's not.
Nope.
And we found out, well, first, Olivia said it, but there are at least two weapons now that we know of.
Right.
Not just one.
Well, going all the way back to the medical examiner's report, the medical examiner, before she was shut up by law enforcement, she had said that the wounds were different. And a lot of people took from that
we figured, right?
Yeah. So that wasn't,
But Ann Taylor did bring up multiple weapons and multiple perpetrators. That didn't come out right. Multiple perpetrators.
Yeah.
So, and that's another thing. If you're listening to what the defense says during these hearings, there's your clues. She's not lying, right? that's in the document.
One of the things that really struck me about the press conference was when they said there was no social media connection between Mr. Kohberger and any of the victims. And I'm scratching my head and remembering a little more than a year ago, there was a guy by the name of Garrett Discoveries, Andrew Garrett. I don't know if you remember that, but he had this chart that looked like speckled Christmas wrapping paper. And the more you went in, the blurrier it went. And he allegedly claimed, purportedly due to his research that he really didn't want to talk about, that did show that there were connections, that he was looking into it, and there were connections between Maddie and Kaylee and BK. And I never bought it. And he kind of was very specific and vague and not wanting to talk about it. And I invited him 3 times to come on and talk, twice directly through his website and once through a third party. And he ghosted me twice and said no a third time. So I think he's full of garbanzo beans, really. That's my opinion.
He is. I think he tried to debunk Cy Ray is what he was trying to do.
I think he was before Cy Ray, wasn't he? I think he was before Cy Ray, because Cy Ray was talking about, being able to track the iPhones or the smartphones. And Garrett's gig allegedly, purportedly based on this fuzzy, Christmas wrapping, glittery thing, he was saying, oh no, he and his company could gauge contacts. Like suppose you and I, talked on TikTok or our kids talked on Yik Yak, or he could tie it all together. Well, he didn't. He gave a couple of really vague interviews where he really didn't answer any questions directly. And like I said, the reporter in me, the attorney in me wanted to kind of nail it down, and he didn't want to talk to me. So I think he's full of Boston baked beans.
I will agree.
So,
but let's just wait for these all these documents. Everyone's downloading them and going over them. So
well, I read some of them today. I read a bunch of them, but I'm trying to work. And my friend, I don't know if you follow my friend Evil CJ. He was going through a bunch of them on his episode, and I think People Magazine published a special. But I have to rely on my own eyes. I have to rely on my own eyes and my own brain. So I've only read maybe 7 or 8 of them, and there's 50 of them, and I think actually more.
There's a lot. So I haven't watched Evil CJ for a minute.
Yeah.
So where is he standing right now?
He's just going through all the documents. I mean, I'll let him speak for himself. I like him and I respect him, and I think he's a great guy. We have a bet going on. We bet.
Oh, I watched that actually.
Oh, you saw that?
A cup of coffee.
Yeah, we respectfully disagree about, he thinks that we know everything. There's nothing big that's going to go. And he might be right, but I said, no, there's got to be more. I mean, the guy, all of a sudden, he turned tail 180 degrees and pled guilty.
That's where I was at.
There has to be more. So we respectfully and amicably, because we've known each other for a while, through social media.
He already owes you a cup of coffee.
Not yet, no.
Why? Because all these documents drop. It's telling you what happened.
Yeah, but there's no big smoking gun. There's nothing.
Oh.
So that was what the bet was. That was the bet, was that in all the information that was going to come out. I mean, we both agreed that a lot of information is going to come out, but the bet was that he says there's nothing going to be really big. And I'll let him speak for himself. And I said, no, I think there's got to be something. I don't like the word bombshell. My regular viewers know I don't like that word, but I said, there's got to be something that we don't know. There's got to be something big we don't know. So that's why we got a cup of coffee.
Okay, so think about this one, because this could work for you. This could be on your side. That one person, right, did this for Ellie, but he was carrying 2 weapons, a vacuum, and a box for his kill kit, and what else?
I don't know.
Oh, I should have said a K kit. Sorry. Think about that. Remember all the stuff that they said he was packing in?
How does one guy, on the one hand, how does one guy do all of that? How does one guy,
8
do
minutes.
all of the stabs that we've heard about. On the other hand, he's a loner. He's never really had any close friends. He didn't know how to date a girl. He didn't really have a lot of close friends. So he's a loner. That mitigates against him having anyone helping him, doesn't it?
Right. So, and he cleaned up, and he's got dexterity issues. If you'll recall, that was one of his problems. His hand coordination is very poor, hence his poor handwriting. And when he was younger, he had a hard time even tying his shoes, let alone fillet a fish. He couldn't even do that. But he did all this, right? But 2 weapons. Think about this. This is on your side.
Yeah.
I say
Yeah.
it's your side. You get a cup of coffee.
Well, we put a 1 year. I said we have to put a timeline on it, so I said 1 year. So we have
Oh,
1 year.
okay.
We have 1 year. So I don't know. I think something big will come out. I mean, I don't know. A lot of
It
mysteries
will.
in this case. A lot of mysteries in this case. And I refuse to be like the other YouTube lawyers. People always go down in the comments and they say, "Didn't you see what so and so did?" Or "Didn't you see such and such's episode today? They said this." And yeah, you know what? I saw it, but I'm me. I'm me. The thing about YouTube is that it's big enough for all of us, for all
Yes.
views, for all thoughts. I think differently than other people. I learned that very
Yeah.
early in my life, and I'm not going to just say, "Oh, well, everybody else says this." So, no, I have a really hard time with the guilty plea. I have a really hard time with the guilty plea. And I don't know if you watch, do you watch Harsh Reality? He did an
Yeah.
episode this week on all of the people that have pled guilty that it was later found they weren't guilty at all.
Yeah.
And I think I'm going to steal that material and go over it a little bit in my
Yeah,
next episode.
because you've got to think of it this way with those threats and then getting the death penalty off and getting it out of Hitler's courtroom and away from Santa Claus, right? You have to get it out of there. You didn't stand a chance in that courtroom, especially with all the media that had just got released. Like, let's just start over. So right now, I think this part of the case is just starting.
I don't know.
For the truth, I think. I do. I honestly do.
All right. I respect your viewpoint. I really do. I have a hard time with it. I really have a hard time with it.
I mean, he said he's going to violate the agreement. I'm like, well, what are they going to do? Put him in jail for violation of something? Like, what? You can't punish the man any more than a life sentence. So
I'll just play devil's advocate and point out that, I mean, so he has a trial. It goes 3 months. There's a chance. Any attorney will tell you that going to actually trial, if you can't resolve the case, it's a roll of the dice because juries do things. Yes. We all know juries can do things that are highly unexpected. So it's a roll of the dice. He had a chance. Now, if he won, he walks. If he lost, he had anywhere between 18 and 27 different years to appeal. I mean, I've seen different attorneys use different statistics. One says the average is 18 years for all the DP appeals. The other says it's 28 years. I haven't done my own research, but I do know it lasts. It's forever. It's forever, 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 forever.
I feel like, I don't know if it was just stuff coming out of Steve's mouth or he had any facts. They were trying to rush that firing squad room along just for him. So I don't know. We've got a guy here in Utah that's been on death row for 47 years.
And they've got Thomas Creech there in Idaho, who has been on death row since the 1980s. And they tried to execute him back in February. And they tried, I forget how many needle sites. They couldn't get a needle site. And so, they tried. And that's cruel and unusual punishment. Sua sponte, without any question. Absolutely.
Yeah. And we had a lethal injection here, I think, beginning of this year in Salt Lake. So they do have the drugs. They can do it. But anyway, okay, enough about death penalty. But I just think he needed to get away from that judge. And I think he wants exoneration. I don't think he just wants a not guilty.
And like I've said before, I have trouble with it. Unlike the other YouTube attorneys, I do have trouble with the guilty plea, and I do think there's some wiggle room. But I mean, he's
Yeah.
going to have trouble if he does appeal that he did plead guilty, and he did stand there in open court and say it was willing and voluntary. And
Ineffective counsel will get it over, I think. Plus,
maybe.
just all the misconduct of the prosecution, them stating that they don't have any factual evidence right there. Like, what'd you arrest him on? Right? So
I don't want to
lots
go
of
back
argument.
and argue everything back to the very beginning of the case. I really don't. But I do
Yeah.
agree with you to the extent that I think that there's enough wiggle room that something big is going to happen in this case.
Yeah.
Something big is going to happen in this case that we don't know what it is, but something big is going to happen in this case.
Yes, it is. I feel
All right.
it. I feel like it's coming, so just be ready.
I will be ready. You too.
Okay.
Good to talk to you, Sue. You be
Good
well.
to talk to you. Okay, you too.
Have a
Thanks.
good evening. Okay. Bye. Thank you, Sue Kapinsky, for sharing your experiences in Boise, Idaho, in the Ada County Court there on the day of the BK sentencing. I appreciate that. Sue then sent us some video that she took of out in the hallway in the scramble between the end of that formal sentencing hearing and then law enforcement in the same building gave a press conference, a presser as they called it, and answered some questions. It was largely hard to watch for those of us that weren't part of law enforcement, them, self-congratulatory and I guess well-deserved, congratulating themselves on the job that they had done. But then when they got done with all of that and the pats on the back that are obligatory, they then did, in fact, answer some questions. And we did get some information out of them. And here are my top takes of what we got from law enforcement in that press release. The first time they could really speak after the non-dissemination order was over and the sentencing was order, and they're all in the same room. They told us that BK was not Papa Roger. Remember in the beginning, there was this whole thing about the incel and they had a website and Facebook page and all that good stuff. And people speculated because the icon, the picture of Mr. Papa Roger looked very similar to BK. But according to law enforcement, that's one of the big, post-verdict, post-sentencing statements was BK was not Papa Roger. Next, all of the evidence points to the K-bar as the only weapon. That contradicts some other stuff that we've heard. None of the results of any psych testing that they got rose to the level of supporting a defense under Idaho law. And we're talking about a defense, not a mitigating or aggravating factor later on post-conviction, had there been a conviction. This is with regard to whether or not there's a defense, an insanity defense or a defense that the person lacks capacity. That's what they're talking about here. Next, we have not found a social media link, have to this day not found any connection between BK and any of the victims. All right, so that's what law enforcement is telling us. Do you remember in coverage of Mr. Patterson's book, the whole thing about Mr. Kohberger going into the Mad Greek and seeing not Kaylee, but Madison, and then somehow approaching her on her Instagram or some other social media account and just being ignored? That was kind of brought back up in the Patterson book, but here they're saying no. And the other thing that comes to mind is a guy by the name of Andrew Garrett of Garrett Discovery, as I mentioned with Sue a few moments ago, had put out a kind of vague graphic showing all these little dots on the page and alleging that he knew all about, the fact that there were, in fact, social contacts between them. I reached out to him. I tried to do an interview with him. He wanted nothing of the part. So it sounds like it was all bunk. I'd be happy to have him come on if he wants to invite himself. We'll give him some time. Law enforcement does not have a motive. They still don't. And in a personal interview that William Thompson did with one of the networks, I watched so much I can't remember, but he did an interview with one of the networks and he said, no, we do not have a motive. We have a lot of thoughts about that, but there's no evidence of any motive. And yeah, we've heard a lot of theories, not going to go into them now. as for an allocution in which Mr. Kohberger would have been required to give details of what happened, how it happened, who did he really target, what was he thinking, what weapon did he use, where did he throw the weapon, and all of that. According to law enforcement in their press conference, Idaho law does not require further details as part of a plea. That's the law in Idaho, we're told. Law enforcement would not trust anything that came out of his mouth, we were told, to be anything other than self-serving. And on that one, I kind of agree. I mean, you know, he has this association with a former professor that he had while he was studying criminology, and I guess he's holding it all in. All he said at the hearing was, "I respectfully decline," when he was asked if he wanted to say anything. He just said those 3 words, and I guess in his mind, he's saving it for a book that he would hope to do. And I don't know. Again, I'm the only attorney that I'm aware of that does YouTube podcasting that's just shaking my head. I know. Down in the comments, people tell me all the time. Didn't you see what so-and-so did? Didn't you hear what so-and-so said? Didn't you watch that episode? If you really want to know what's going on, you've got to see so-and-so. I watch them, especially the legal people. Some of them are very good, and I like them a lot, and that's why I watch them, especially when I'm on the treadmill at the gym. You know, it gives me something to keep my mind active other than listening to the same AC/DC and Metallica songs all the time. In any event, they all say, well, he said he's guilty, so he's guilty. They said he's guilty, so he's guilty. I'm a member of the bar, and I'm an officer of the court, and so I have to believe all this. I still have a lot of questions. I just had an argument with a guy here in my office, a friendly argument. We try to be amicable here on the channel and in the office. Andrew, he did it. I just have a lot of questions. The whole thing is fishy. There are a lot of things that don't make sense if you go into all the documents. And yes, I do have all the documents that were released on the Moscow website. I'm going through them. There's some interesting stuff in all of those. Hopefully in a future episode, I'll be able to go through that with you, because there is some interesting material, and I've seen the networks kind of gloss over it all. So I will read all of that. But people do plead guilty that are not guilty. And I'm going to bring up some material now. So I've got to admit that I kind of stole this from you, Harsh, and I admit it. But it's good material. Here's an article that was in the American Psychological Association. Why do people admit to crimes they didn't commit? Of all of the convicted people have been exonerated by DNA testing, almost 30% confessed to crimes they did not commit, according to the nonprofit legal rights group, the Innocence Project. And we've had an attorney on this channel from the Innocence Project. What's behind these false confessions? False confessions expert Saul Kassin, PhD, discussed what we know about that behavior at a congressional briefing hosted on April 29th by the APA's Science Government Relations Office. So that was April 29th of 2015. Good information, though. The psychology behind false confessions is more difficult to comprehend than S, said Kassin, a distinguished professor of psychology at the John Jay College of Criminal Justice. Not having a similar experience themselves, people don't fundamentally understand that they can be broken into doing things that they would never dream of doing. His research helps to explain why people implicate themselves. He's found, for example, that vulnerable suspects, including teenagers, people with intellectual impairments, and those with mental illness are more likely to make false confessions, especially if they are under pressure from interrogators. Police are permitted to lie about evidence and imply promises and threats through subtle but lawful tactics. And so, people with intellectual impairments and those with mental illness, we're not going to say that's Bryan Kohberger, but people want to put down in the comment as well, Mr. Myers, you do know that Mr. Kohberger is on the spectrum. And so Casson has also found that prolonged sleepless interrogation sessions and trauma can lead innocent people to believe they committed a crime. For example, in 1988, Martin Tankleff was convicted of murdering his parents on Long Island. Detectives told Tankleff, who was 17 at the time, that they had found a lock of his hair in his mother's hand. They also falsely reported that his father said Tankleff had committed the crime before losing consciousness and later dying. Both assertions were lies. And so, you know what? Those facts are not exactly the same as the facts of the Kohberger case, but in the Kohberger case, a lot of people, 56% of the people who responded to our poll on this subject, said that they just thought there was a lot of fishy stuff. There were a lot of unanswered questions. The far majority of people that responded to our poll, which had just over 500 respondents, said they have unanswered questions about this, not the least of which was the way the whole thing went down in the end. I mean, there had been a hearing and the motion to continue the trial had been denied. The motion to allow the alternative suspects in had been denied. All of this happened in June of 2025. All of a sudden, we hear on June 30th of 2025 that Mr. Kohberger has decided to take a plea, and it just happened so quickly. And yes, innocent people do plead guilty at many points during a trial. Here's another article that I stole from Harsh. Thank you, Harsh. When the innocent, whoops, what happened here? Here we go. When the innocent plead guilty. Thank you, Harsh. I kind of stole this material from you, but it's out there on the internet, and I thank you. You've been very helpful to us many times. When the innocent plead guilty, the 31 individuals listed below pled guilty to crimes they did not commit, usually seeking to avoid the potential for a long sentence or a DP. They served a combined total of more than 150 years in prison before they were exonerated. So there's a list of all of these cases, and there are just, little summaries of all of these cases. But then you can go and research and see what really happened. So here's 31 cases in the United States. Michael Marshall pleaded guilty in 2008 to stealing a truck in Georgia after he was identified by an eyewitness. He was sentenced to 10 years in prison, but was freed in December 2009 after DNA testing obtained by the Georgia Innocence Project proved his innocence and pointed to the identity of the real perpetrator. And here's Christopher Ocho, I will guess, falsely confessed and pled guilty to M in Texas that he did not commit. He testified against his co-defendant to avoid a possible DP. Sound familiar? And served nearly 12 years in prison before DNA testing led to his exoneration, and also identified the real perpetrator in the case. I could go on, but there is the article. You can look it up. I'll go up to the top so you can see where we got it. And it's good reading, and it specifies and points out specific cases in which, yes, people do plead guilty when they're not guilty. And there's just so many questions in this case. We had one commenter that said, Mr. Myers, you're an attorney. I have to question everything you ever said. So be it. I got to be honest to myself. I'm not going to just toe the line of what all the other YouTuber attorneys are saying. They have great channels and they're all bright people. I'm just not on that train. I'm on a different train. So what train are our viewers on? Our number 5 viewer this week, Christy Ann. The toothache story doesn't make sense, considering the released transcripts. Why publicize the toothache if it was supposed to be about the 4 friends? I also didn't find the roommates' accounts to be true. I didn't say anything because they would call me a pro-burger. Yeah, don't feel bad there, Christy Ann. In the last 2 weeks, I've been called both a pro-burger and a guilter. Neither. I have an open mind. Minds don't work unless they're open, just like a parachute. I don't want to disparage either Dylan or Bethany. They went through a lot, and no, I have not been through that, thank God. And so I can't judge them. At the same time, the 8-hour mystery is one of the biggest mysteries in this case. It has never been addressed by law enforcement or anyone else with a view of the evidence. And the story that was told that Bethany woke up with a toothache and had called her father. No. I thought, Bryan, this is Clara Viana, number 4. I thought Bryan was going to say something, but when I saw some comments, I realized he was going to stay silent. There was a piece of paper in front of him with a black heart on it. Strange. Yeah, I pointed that out. It was strange. I don't know what it means. I don't know if it was random. If anybody knows, no more speculation. We've had enough. We've got to come out of the tunnels in this case and focus on the procedure and the law. But if anybody actually does know who put it there and what it meant, let us know. Number 3, Thrive Collective. Good luck, Mr. Kohberger. This is the beginning of his opportunity to prove his innocence. I am back to Occam's razor, or the KISS principle. Keep it simple, stupid. Jack S. looks guilty by his actions and words. It's extraordinary the way he was able to be the last male with those girls and the first person to have fled Moscow before the sun came up. He was able to have blood spatter present at his apartment. He was able to make a statement about that night in which he doesn't even mention Kaylee by name, and he refers only to Maddie Mogen as his friend. So much for his 15 minutes with Kaylee before the trio departed the CC. 2, Mom of Many. Bill was blocking BK from looking at her. She did not want to see him. All right, this goes to my comment when the stand-in for Bethany was actually speaking. Bill Thompson leaned over like this, and I thought it was a little bit creepy. He was a little bit too close to her, and I don't know. I said I thought it was creepy, but maybe Mom of Many is right. Bill was blocking BK from looking at her. She did not want to see him. I can understand if that's true. And our final comment, Tony Stevenson, a regular. Thanks for sticking with us, Tony. So what was Funk's exculpatory evidence for Kohberger? We will never know. As far as I know, we will never know unless, Richard Batante was a private investigator that was hired by Ann Taylor and the defense team, and he filed an affidavit in this case a long time ago. We posted it. It doesn't say anything really substantive other than that he's an investigator and he spoke to Bethany Funk, and she has exculpatory information. Again, Bethany Funk and Dylan Mortensen, despite her emotional, appearance at the hearing, the sentencing hearing, they've got to really be the happiest 2 people on the planet right now, because they are not going to have to testify and they are not going to have to withstand cross-examination. And as I've said before, I think a law school student who has taken trial practice 101 would be able to tear them apart. So that is our episode this week. Thank you very much if you stayed through the whole thing. It was quite a week, and there's a lot more. There is more. I am going through all of those documents in court. Some of them are repetitive. Some of them dig way deeper into the detail. It seems to me that instead of the probable cause affidavit, they should have just put these together and had one person sign off on it, or just the officers that wrote those reports, because there are a lot of them, too many to go into in this episode because we have gone over our usual time. And so I want to thank you. Let's see. I don't know what emoji you should post here. But you know what? I think it's way too soon. It's way too soon, but they already have the pumpkin spice out at the coffee joints. So post a pumpkin, whether you like it or not. If you've watched us and you're still with us all this way through, post a pumpkin. We'll be talking more about what's in all of the police reports that have been released and the other information. Please subscribe and like. I think we are right on the precipice of 25,000 subscribers as we started this episode. And so I'm hoping we're going to get over that. And I thank you all for being with us. And please remember one thing, be kind. Whether you're down in the comments section, if you totally disagree with me or you totally disagree with one of the other commenters, be nice. Whether you are in the grocery store, the gas station, or anywhere else, please remember to be kind to people. You don't know what they're going through. And the same goes for our comments section. We want you to comment, but be nice, be kind, be positive if you can. And thank you for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. Have a good one.
If you hadn't attacked them in their sleep, Kaylee would have kicked your ass.
You are pathetic.
They were kind of cheering.
So what was Funk's exculpatory evidence for Kohberger? We will never know.